3 minutes. We're waiting for Councilwoman Ruano and Councilman Fernandez, who are on the way. Good evening, everyone. We're going to call this workshop to order. Please rise for a prayer led by Deputy Town Attorney Lorenzo Cobiella.
Let's bow our heads. We ask you, dear Father, that you be with us this evening as we discuss the agenda that is set forth for discussing the budget and discussing matters that are important to this town. That you send your Holy Spirit so that they be with us all and impart wisdom on this council and the folks that are going to be speaking this evening and all those that will be giving presentations so that they can do the good will and the good job for the people of Miami Lakes. And we ask this, Lord, always in your name. Amen. Holy Spirit.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, given that this is a workshop, we typically do not have public comments, but I'm going to make a motion to open up for public comments.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak on public comments?
Point of personal privilege before you continue, Mr. Vice Mayor. Can you hear me?
Angelo Garcia, 16441 Northwest 77th Place. Basically, nothing to do with the budget. I'm actually here for something totally different. I've been talking about this issue for quite some time. Some of you probably remember the issue that I've talked about, the rat issue in the back of my canal, which is Peters Pike's Canal. The company that's been going out there for the last, that I can remember, about 16 years now, the last one now is Krypton Pest Control, which I have not seen them for quite some time. When I say quite some time, I have one of those main keys to open it, and there is no bait in there. One of my neighbors just recently got bit and had to go to the hospital. He was there trying to find the papers. He has to get a copy, and he had to get all kinds of shots for rabies and everything. We are infested again in that canal, Mr. Manager. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about these rats. What I'm going to do is I've never given Gina a present. I'm actually going to bring her Papa Rat, Mama Rat, and Baby Rat, and I'm going to put it, Gina, maybe as a trophy so you can remind them about the issue with the rats. Actually, Wayne Slayton has Mama Rat and Papa Rat and Baby Rats in his garage. He still has them. So I hope we can take care of this issue before, I have to get involved and start getting all these rats and bringing them down here to show them to you. The next one is, second item is, I don't know if some of you have seen or driven over by Fairway Drive. I invite you to, tonight, right around 4 in the morning when I pass by there to go home, you will see a set of lights that look like disco lights, okay? They're over there by the 7-Eleven. So if some of us are showing, yes, where is our public works people? Where's the people that are supposed to be looking at these things? And why is it only me that have to be looking at all these things? I don't get paid to do this. So I'm asking somebody to please start finding out what's going on. The rat problem is a big issue. Now these lights are another issue. Come on, folks, please. Let's get in tune. Let's do what we've got to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in public comments?
Martha Mendez, 7,000 Glen Eagle Drive. I left the last budget hearing because I got annoyed. That's not what I wanted to use, or what I wanted to use. The word I wanted to use is much stronger, because it didn't start when we were told it was going to start. We waited and we waited and we waited. There was no quorum. So it just shows to the residents that to you the budget is not important. Now I wanna, Melissa just delivered what you asked for at the last meeting. And it's a wonderful piece of work. It tells you if you're gonna reduce the millage rate, how much you have to come up with. At 1%, 2%, the full rollback is $795,000. And the councilwoman asked, again, a list of things that could be removed from the budget. And I felt that I had to take a look at what was in here. Let's begin by the request for 2 additional police officers. You hire a building manager, you hire a public works director, you hire specialists, you hired a major. If the major says he needs $50,000 because I had the piece of paper here. Current staffing levels are appropriate for the existing workload. I believe the major. I don't believe what the residents are telling you, because there's not enough police in the world to cover every street in the town of Miami Lakes. If the major says to you, current staffing levels are appropriate, I would go with the major says. I wouldn't add additional policemen. You want to do something, put cameras in the street corners. And that would cover much more of the town than 2 police officers. Okay, you have a list of things. You can take money from all the committees. You can take money Don't give any awards for the next year. You have a whole bunch of stuff you can do. I would like somebody to explain to me, building department, can I go through this?
Make a motion to extend for 1 more minute.
Second.
All's in favor?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Building Department Fund, it was in the PowerPoint presentation that was done the last time. It says contingency reserves, $435,000. What the heck is that? What is a contingency reserve? You go on, and it goes, we go into almost the last few pages, and that's the capital fund. Miami Lakes Optimist Park Master Plan, $509,000. What other master plan do we need? I don't understand what this amount of money is for. Entry feature, Northwest 67th Avenue. You destroyed the one that was there in order to make 67th Avenue. We've done without an entry feature. Do without the entry feature. We don't need an entry feature. We can live without the entry feature for another year. Senior center build-out. I have a few. This is big. Senior center build. The Grahams haven't built anything yet. And you have $500,000 in that account for a building that's not done yet. That is beyond me. I don't know why that is in there. The part 3, we don't own it. I mean, it's item after contingency reserve, another contingency reserve. You go item and item over and over, stuff that we don't have. We can do without. And we can do without the 2 police officers also. And I want the rollback rate to 2.11.
Thank you. Any other members of the audience or anyone online wishing to speak in public comments?
Vice Mayor, I just
Yes.
want to welcome and take note that Councilmember Dieguez is online, and he would like to speak. He would like to say some words, personal privilege.
Okay.
Welcome,
Councilman.
Councilmember Dieguez.
Can you hear me?
No, we see you, but we don't hear you. No audio.
Councilman, if you call in, I think
Hello?
there you go.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
We hear you.
No, I just wanted to take a moment of personal privilege earlier. As we all know, Barbara Ruiz passed away not too long ago. So I just wanted to ask if my colleagues would indulge me and staff would indulge me in asking for a moment of silence for Bob.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Manager, do you want to get this going?
Yeah.
Give us-
At the first budget hearing, both ordinances were passed as presented in the first reading. For second reading, we were asked to come back and bring back some research or some information. What you have before you, we tried to make it and condense it and make it easy for you. It's a one-pager, information on both sides of the page. The front page we provided for you to know what the dollar value impact would be for any modification to the proposed millage rate. As you could see there, the scale, obviously these are just whole numbers, so you can do whatever you want there, but there's no change, there's 1% reduction, 2% reduction, et cetera, all the way down until the rollback rate. The next item we tried to capture, and I'll ask Melissa to come up in a minute to explain exactly. She's dealt with the property appraiser's property appraiser's office, and put together this information that dealt with the exemptions. So she'll quantify for this and exactly what it means and the numbers and so forth. The third item on this page, on this side of the page, is the proposed police department increase. What we did, we quantified what it would be for one police officer. Obviously, this is an average, because you can get a rookie police officer, cost you a lot less. If you get a 20-year, 30-year officer, it costs you more. So we got this from the Miami-Dade Police Department, and this number of $160,000 is all in. It's salary, it's benefits, it's a police car, it's uniforms, it's head-to-toe, completely ready-to-go officer. The total cost for an average police officer, $160,000. On the flip side of the document, we went through, similar to the exercise that we went through when the FP&L franchise fee was going to be short for 1 year and we had to go through line by line. We went through and made some recommendations on some areas that could be explored for different levels. So we essentially provided like a column A and column B. Column A is the front side for you to look at different revenue changes, and the back side were some considerations for you to look at for expenditure reduction to make up for the loss of the revenue on the front side. I'm sure we didn't capture everything, but we took a hard look at it over the last few days since the budget hearing, and we quantified some information for you. Melissa, can you come up and just real quickly walk through the exemptions so they can have a clear understanding of exactly what the numbers that you put on this page represent, please? Thank you.
Good evening. So the total number of senior exemptions within the town of Miami Lakes are 367. The long-term seniors is 33. The exemption value, as you see, is 17 million, and then the 33 is $1.7 million. What that equates to in dollars is, for both, is about $44,427 of what they would be paying to the town. Now, in the budget hearing, the mayor had requested for 3 specific other exemptions, which were for the deployed military exemption, the disabled first responder, and other disability exemptions. Those equate to 117. The exemption value would be 11 million, and in dollars, it would be about $25,987.
Yeah, and for instance, I just want to make a point on what Melissa just described. For instance, deployed military. We may have town residents that are deployed military, but if the deployed military, the soldier, the sailor, whoever, doesn't go through the process of applying to the county for the exemption, it won't be there, right? So it's similar to, like, all of these is the same thing. It has to be that the person is aware of the exemption, goes through the process, applies for it, qualifies, and then they'll be on the list for the exemption. So,
Any questions?
Melissa, I just want the distinction between the senior exemption and the long-term senior. Those 33, aren't they also already represented in the senior exemption?
Yes, sir, they are.
Okay.
In order to qualify for the long-term, you must first qualify for the senior.
So the 4,000 is over and above what the benefit they get from the senior exemption?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so okay, thank you.
Any questions?
I have a question. It's on. Hello, can you hear me? Maybe it's too far away. At the last budget hearing, or at our first budget hearing, we discussed how it was that these exemptions would be refunded to the taxpayer. For example, for these exemptions here, that there's 116 in one category, how would we have the same issue with that type of refund that Councilmember Collazo brought up at the last meeting?
I will defer that question to the town attorney. I believe that, yes, we indeed would.
Thank you, Melissa.
I briefly discussed this with the manager, and I'd like to come back with you with a little bit more, but I do not believe that we as a city can provide rebates per se. That's not something that is provided to us in either the Constitution. The Constitution is very specific as to what we can do as a municipal organization. Levy taxes in this fashion is not one of them. And neither is giving a rebate of taxes either.
Understood, thank you.
Not to tip my hand before tomorrow morning's meeting, but one of the items that I hope to bring forward as a legislative priority is changing precisely that, right? So that's for tomorrow morning's legislative priority meeting. That's one of the items that I'm gonna be requesting from our state guys to create a way for municipalities to be able to either rebate or exempt beyond the minimum that's set forward now at the state level.
Any other questions of Melissa regarding the budget or the cost reductions for consideration that she provided to us?
No questions, just a big thank you. I know this was a tall ask, and as always, you delivered. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? I wanted to talk about something, and it was specifically regarding the police agreements. Obviously, I requested the information regarding the number of officers because I was curious to see what it would cost us as opposed to the proposal that the major and the manager gave us of the 3-officer specialized, I guess, what do we call it, vandalism unit?
Yeah, vehicle burglary.
Vehicle burglary
Right,
unit.
there were 2 details, one for the vehicle burglaries and one for the traffic
Right.
enforcement.
So the information you provided at the last meeting was $25,000 for 3 officers to work overtime at this special detailed unit, specifically to address the vehicle burglary issue that we have throughout town.
Correct.
And that those $25,000 would get us officers, those 3 officers, 1 time a week for 26 weeks.
Right, on average, once a week. As I discussed with the major earlier today, sometimes they'll do 2 or 3 in a row and then go a week without one because we always want to keep the bad guys off, off balance. So,
Okay.
but on average, you're 100% right. It would be 1 detail per week for 26 weeks.
Okay. And if, obviously, we have to go through this list of potential cost reductions to find the funds, right, to pay for this overtime unit, because you've only given us, there's allocated 25 already in the budget.
50? 25 for 1 detail,
No, but
25
I'm
for
talking
the
specifically about the
vehicle
the
burglary?
vehicle burglary.
25,000.
Okay. So if we wanted to do that vehicle burglary program 3 times a week,
That'd be an additional 50,000.
right, so it'd be $75,000 for the 26 weeks
Correct.
as a pilot program to see if that somehow can help
Correct.
deter that issue. I think $75,000 paying overtime to existing officers is a better option than hiring new officers. There'll be officers that are already trained, they already know the area. So, I think we can do it as a pilot program, and it can be something that we can stop as opposed to hiring a new officer, and then we'd have to fire an officer, which is not something that we want to do. So that is what I'm going to propose at the next budget meeting, is that we end up where we have for half the year, 26 weeks, we allocate funds for $75,000 to have 3 officers, 3 nights a week. And I mean, the major can chime in, but I'm assuming that these are going to be roving units. These are going to be units that are either going to be marked or unmarked, because I'm sure there'll be a mixture.
Or a combination.
Yeah. So if you wanted to give a little bit more detail on how that program is going to work, and whether you agree that 3 days a week, one of them being a weekend, would be my recommendation.
Sure. And keep in mind that it could be 2 details week 1, 3 week 2, 0 week 3, 4 week 5, so we're on average, you're looking at 2 to 3 details a week over these 26 weeks if you allocate an additional 25,000 to it. Understand that some of the rates are differing for each and every officer. So if we utilize a lot of rookie officers in this, that money might stretch a little bit more. And it does allow a leeway for discussion between me and the town manager at some point, where I can say I might need an additional 5,000 just to top something off, or no, it looks like we're doing good and we're on schedule, and so on and so forth. And these details, the traffic details, are obviously people in uniform cars with uniforms running radar on certain roadways, so that's set to the side. And the ones that are the burglary details can be a combination of 2 undercover and 1 in uniform, or all 3 undercover, and they'll be in various locations throughout the town.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's gonna be more effective, at least for the short term. And then we'll see how that works, and then we can extend it or not. And I think that gives us a little bit more flexibility than hiring an officer.
Obviously, we're talking about hours, right? So, hours that we can put in gaps, A regular officer is 8 hours a day, and the salary is this much, whereas, we can utilize it for a lot more hours if we're, if we just have the
Right,
funds
because
for it.
the reality is that our issue spot is between midnight and 4 in the morning. So it's much less to cover, and we can do it that way, I think, better. So, thank you.
And Vice Mayor, I spoke operationally, right? Operationally, I spoke with the Major several times, as early as earlier today, or as late as earlier today. And what his plan is similar to the assessment with the data and the metrics that he used to come to the conclusion of his in determining his plan of action. He'll also continue to follow those metrics, see the trends, see what's happening, see the effectiveness of this operation, and by the mid-year, he'll be able to come back with hard data, with metrics, with data as to whether it's being effective or not effective. Do we need to add more money to it, or it's accomplished its mission? And then at the mid-year, with the carry-forward amendment, he'll have an operational recommendation as to what to do with that detail moving forward from the mid-year on.
Perfect. Anyone else have questions of the Major?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do while he's up here. And Mr. Manager, you remember during our budget briefing, I expressed some issues and some concerns with some of that data. I want to look at more of the data, specifically the data regarding traffic citations issued over the last 5-year period. So when I took a look at the data that you presented, I think it's good data, it's important data, but it's data that relates to mostly violent crime and response time and things like that. I want to make sure that we're not keeping our response time favorable by not pulling over and not ticketing traffic citations, right? I want to make sure that the tail isn't wagging the dog, and that our numbers look good, but it's at the detriment of no longer doing speed and radar and those things, right? Obviously, if an officer has somebody pulled over, they're not able to immediately respond to that call. The call has to be responded to from another unit. So I want to look at a little bit more data than what was presented, specifically when we're looking at the efficacy of these new details, to figure out if we want, if these details are sufficient, or if we want to do something a little bit more permanent. The other question that I had specifically regarding the traffic detail, right? So I would assume if these officers are doing purely traffic during that time, they're going to be called into court. So what is that budgeted for? How are you foreseeing that working out?
It's not necessarily budgeted as well for court overtime, but I will say that over the past, so 2 things, because you talk about traffic citations and you talk about, I like to use the term more traffic stops.
Yeah. Traffic stops is fine.
Course.
I'm fine with warnings and things of that nature.
And you'll notice a trend, especially since I've been here now 5 years. I can tell you've seen a trend where we used to do a lot more traffic stops. Now it's possible that 6 or 7 years ago we had a lot more traffic stops because You had a lot more traffic details back then, a lot more overtime provided for that. Obviously, I don't, it's not like I have that information available because I wasn't here. But you also saw a dip in traffic stops during COVID because you had less traffic out there. We had less of our officers, pulling people over for specific reasons. But you see dips and crevices and mountains and peaks. And obviously, the number of citations also goes down if you start to see a lot more targeting of locations and a lot more compliance on behalf of the driver as well. If certain people are driving now within the speed limit, then you see a lot less traffic stops. So these are all things to take into consideration when we're looking at that data over a period of time. And in terms of court time, there's been a significant trend over the past 5 years of our court overtime actually going down. It's something that I looked at, and I would say...
Would you think there's a correlation with that and traffic citations also going down?
Traffic citations, but also COVID, and also the movement towards virtual court now has actually allowed us to go significantly down. Yeah, but more efficient, and it's
Instead of driving downtown, they sit in the office here, do a 10-minute hearing, and they're back in service. So it's much more efficient for the officer's time.
I unfortunately have participated in the process from the other side.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're even if we do see an increase of court overtime, not just because of the traffic citations, but also because of the burglary, vehicle detail, any arrests, warrants, or things of that nature that we do. I don't see it significantly impacting my core overtime to the point where it would overwhelm it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Major. Any other questions?
No. The reason that I wanted to chime in, one of the things, we did it much more informally last time when we were all up in that room, and I don't think that this is the same. Not getting the same feeling, but I do want the same outcome. So just like we did last time, we didn't take a vote, right? But we understood, I hear the vice mayor, seems like a logical. Let's go back to the other side of the balance sheet, right? And where do we find the 50, the 25? Where are we going to find that from?
Yeah, I actually identified one that I had a question.
Are we just going to, we're going to
Yeah,
go
we
back
just
and
have
forth?
open
Okay.
conversation.
All right.
I think that's going to be best to just have
To make it more like what we did last week.
exactly a more informal process. The first one I identified was the professional services for town arborist. It's currently a vacant position. We have allocated $45,000 to that position. How are we handling that, and how can we save that money?
Jeremy, just explain the operational things that you're doing now to be able to handle the requirement for the arborist, and what your hope was to be able to handle the day-to-day things and then use the certification of another entity just to cover the things that require the arborist certification.
Correct. So right now, the way we're handling our arbor care overall is all the upfront clerical and customer service is handled by an intern right now. We have an intern who came to the Parks Department from St. Thomas, and he's been working with various projects. This is one of the sections that he's mostly focused on. So right now we have a temporary position that's handling a lot of the call volume, a lot of the permit applications, and just getting their permits filed. Now with that, we just brought on board Ryan Vogel as our new Parks and Athletics Manager. Ryan is a Parks individual who also comes with a lot of background and is a certified arborist. So what we look to do is utilize him for his arbor certification and knowledge and background for those things that are specific to being a certified ISA arborist when it comes to permit review, if it comes to special magistrate, if it comes to determinations for trees and or situations where an expert opinion is needed, we will be using that route. He will have a small portion of his day-to-day. It'll probably be once a week is what we're looking at, where he'll dedicate towards arbor. With that, he'll give the main 30,000 view oversight of how to manage our arbor canopy. But the idea was to utilize those funds to have a a part-time position to handle the day-to-day call volume, day-to-day customer service. The biggest thing we face there, as we're able managerially to put together work orders, put together annual phases, the biggest hurdle there is really delivering that customer service on every call, returning every single request or inquiry, and being able to provide updates. Because right now, unfortunately, we only have one vendor, it's tough to provide updates, especially going over so much long periods of time. So right now, that true need is for someone to handle that call that we get at least 3 to 4, if not much more a day, for any updates on Arbor.
And budgetarily, that's what the $45,000 is intended to cover.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Intended to cover this gentleman's position.
Right now, he's an intern, and he's being paid at an intern rate.
There's
This
an
would
end
be-
to the internship, yeah.
Yeah, there would be,
Okay.
there's
So we're
there's
using
an
them
end,
in the
and this would be
meantime.
to onboard someone into that position. And this gentleman can handle it, and it looks like something that we may
Okay,
be
I had
looking
another
into.
question regarding tree planting. There's a line item here on the cost reduction items for us to consider. There's tree planting at $54,000. The tree planting, where does that, I thought that came from fines that were imposed on individuals that,
2 different accounts. So that is what we budget within the general fund. The other one is from might be in the general fund as well, but that one is from all the permit money that we receive for removals that have to happen for private properties and so forth. That's a smaller amount.
that's a smaller amount?
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to get code enforcement on the street, and we need to, if I did code enforcement, that pot would be much bigger. Because on any given weekend, I can identify several houses that are cutting down trees or trimming trees that they should not be trimming. So perhaps this number can be subsidized by an increase in code enforcement. I know that we were
Yeah,
looking
and
to do.
that's one of the items that's on this list,
Yeah.
because we haven't filled it yet, but there was the intent to add a second code enforcement officer, so we have twice as many eyes on the weekends, an extra code enforcement officer, weekends only. Currently, we have one that works Saturdays and Sundays, and when that gentleman is off for any reason, then one of our regular code enforcement officers rearranges their schedule so that they can be the eyes and ears out there on the weekends. But the proposal that I think Councilmember Dieguez had proposed, and we have in here, is for a second weekend code enforcement officer.
Yes.
Okay, because this is the tree planting, I think should come from that particular fund.
Yeah, that tree removal, it goes for removals and installs and pretty much as needed. It's not just strictly installs. On the tree permit fund,
Right.
that's completely different, yeah. But it'll cover both installs and removals and
Okay, so
and
we
that's it.
should, I would propose to limit what we spend on trees in general, to limit it to what we have in that fund, and to police that more, and try to generate more funds that way, because I think that, from the general fund, that's something that we can pull, if everyone is okay with that.
Yeah, and I believe, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, that's that 54,000 there for tree planting. We also use that to leverage for grants
Correct,
for the
and that's where I was gonna-
reforestation program.
Correct.
So the 54 turns into 200,000, or more. Maybe not
Okay.
100, 200,000, but we use that as the local match for grants
For
that are
grants.
county and state grants that we use
So
for.
are we going to be applying for grants this
We
upcoming
will
year?
be continuing to pursue the same grants that we have in the past.
And have we identified the areas that we're going to reforest?
Right now I have not, but I know that there is still portions of West Lake's, minor portions that still need to be completed.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
been the focus for the last several rounds of reforestation, has been almost exclusively
Almost
West Lakes.
exclusively West Lakes, okay. So that's something that I can do without this coming year, if that's a line item that we can look into.
What is the amount typically that is budgeted, other than this 54, for tree trimming? What do we typically spend annually?
For trimming,
For tree planting, I'm sorry.
That
That was
is-
my next question is trimming, but first for planting. Sorry, Melissa. And if you need time, just let us know. I know these questions are.
We
Yeah.
all have it in front of us, but we don't want to shuffle through the papers.
You have the handheld mic there, Melissa, I think.
That is the full removal of tree planting. That's the full removal of the line item that is budgeted
So
for tree
that's what was
planting.
budgeted last year?
Correct.
The 54?
54,281, I think, yeah.
So without the 54, there is no tree planting.
Right.
And then also goes to if the ICA were to be looked at and removing the arborist, the amount of production can also, it would kind of equate. If we don't have an arborist to manage new installs and so forth, the amount that we can install and provide project management for would also be going down.
Would be less. Okay. And then what is this 115 for
Let me get-
tree
let me get my
trimming? That's not what we spend annually on tree trimming, right? There's more than this. I
Yeah,
think.
there's, if you look a little further up, there's 20,000 because the tree trimming there is for the rights of ways, if I'm not mistaken, right? And there's 20,000 further up, that is tree trimming in the mini park. So tree trimming is broken out across multiple areas.
But this is the total.
No, the tree.
The total, no, I'm saying the
115
total,
Total
if
yearly
it's
for the-
identified
for the
on here,
entire
this
town.
is what we spend.
Yeah.
The tree trimming, 115 that you see near the bottom, that is exclusively tree trimming in the rights of ways.
So what you're telling us is if we needed to find the additional $50,000 to have the officer detail, we'd have to cut into one of these items.
So, yeah, we tried to go across all of the departments. We tried to be as broad-based as possible. We have a lot of different things. We thought we'd provide you, our recommendation on a laundry list. Obviously, there's $1.1 million worth of things here. To get the 50,000, you don't have to cut 115 million, $1.1 million. So we just gave you as many options for you to consider as possible. I know this council likes a lot of options.
What about not funding the committee increases? That's like what, 71,000 or something like that?
Yeah,
It was 70.
yeah,
In the proposed new spending, just to be clear.
it's on this list
It's on
too,
the list,
council
yeah.
member, and it's the exact number is 70,600.
Okay, yeah, because I just pulled it up now on my actual computer. I had it on the iPad, but it's coming out funny. Okay, I see it now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another one. And this one, obviously, if we approve those new programming, that's going to be new events, and that's going to be 71,000 added to our annual recurring budget. So, which I would rather put toward police. So that's another one too. I think that we can look at without having to look at the tree planting and all that.
So I'm assuming, I had requested something that didn't make it on this list, and I'm assuming that perhaps it's because the rest of the council didn't request it. I requested the COLA increase for the staff members at a different rate. So when I looked at this, and I had told the manager that I couldn't support an 8% COLA increase for 1 year, I asked for that to be on the list, but it didn't make it on here. So I don't know if it's because maybe I didn't have support. I don't know how they gathered what was gonna go on this
I
list.
wanted all the information, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
we
Okay.
put on here the bonus at 65,000, the merit bonus, which would be up to as much as 2%, because the bonus runs from 0 to 2%. So with the budgeted amount would be as if everybody was getting the 2%. So it's somewhere in that neighborhood of between 0 and 65,311. So
Okay,
the merit bonus. So there is staff compensation that's on here.
But at a bonus. Okay, so the COLA, what is the COLA, what is the cost of the COLA increase at the 8%? Because I looked for it in the report, but I don't have like a dollar amount. I only have like the
Yeah,
percentage.
Melissa has that quantified for you.
It's $237,000.
237 is the entire 8%
In the general fund.
Hold on.
for all staff?
General fund.
Just general fund.
Okay, I need it for all staff. I know that that's why I didn't do it, because it's divvied up into a lot of different categories, right?
Yeah, it's only stormwater and building, right? That's the only other place where, well, and transportation.
Transportation.
Yeah.
So we have in the general fund, we have,
Mr. Manager, and that's because those are restricted funds?
Yes.
So
Those monies could only, like for instance, the building fund is an enterprise fund, all that money has to stay there. So if that COLA money is not, if for instance, we decide on some different percentage and it's not 8%, it's a lower percent, the extra that is saved there in the money that's in the building fund would just go into the
it
savings
stays in the
account.
building fund.
Correct.
Right, and the same happens with transportation and the same thing happens with stormwater. That
So-
would just stay in
Right,
those funds.
so I understand Melissa's point now. This is the amount of money that we can use for something else. The rest of it is pointless to look at.
Right, because the discussion
Understood.
was about reductions to the millage rate and so forth.
Correct.
That's all general fund related items. So that's why the numbers that she calculated there were general fund impact.
So.
Understood. Thank you. I'm
essentially-
sorry, Melissa.
I'm
So
still-
essentially, we're looking at 29,625 per percentage point of COLA.
You did the math?
I did.
I think it
Can you
was-
repeat the math? so
Yes,
can
I
write it
think
down?
you're, because I think Melissa had told me it was like 14 or so thousand, 14 and change thousand per half a percent. So, yes, same thing.
About 30 grand.
29,625 per point. If
Per-
Melissa's
right.
at 14 and change for half a point, then we're on the
Right.
same page.
Almost
Correct.
15, but yep.
And then the one that did make it on the list was the merit, the additional 2% merit bonus.
Yes.
So let me take a second to draw something that for me is a non-starter on the cost reductions for consideration. That would be the 4th of July event and the Veterans Day Parade. Those should not be on this list.
I can agree with you on that.
Yeah. We provided what we thought was a reasonable list, some painful, some less painful, some more painful. So we're trying to provide you as much information
So
as
I'm
possible.
okay, I know that Councilmember Dieguez spoke about the committee increases for this year. I had brought that up also during our last meeting. I'm okay not approving committee increases for this particular year. I don't know if that's something that we can agree on.
Yes.
I'm fine with that.
Me too.
Okay, so that's 70. And then with regards to the COLA, I won't be supporting an 8% increase, so I don't know if anyone else has a number that they're more comfortable with.
I was, one of the things I talked to the manager, I looked at the state budget. I think the state came out with a 5.3 something across the board in its calculations for all state employees. I was a little bit closer to that. I did want to offer some flexibility to the manager in retainage. I don't know if that's an issue with salary, with people leaving for higher paying opportunities maybe elsewhere.
Yeah,
So
we had that conversation.
Yeah, so I would like it, I know how this COLA was calculated. I know the figures that the manager shared with me, the baseline. It's just a little too generous with what's going on with some of the other institutions that I have knowledge of. So
I agree. I don't think that anyone else has passed anything at this rate, and I did have the conversation with the manager about employee retention. But there are some positions that we're paying well, and that includes the manager, the deputy manager. Like, I just don't think, and I did discuss with him perhaps higher, like increases to some of the lower paying positions where I do think that some of those employees might be really feeling the impacts of inflation more. And I don't know how that would even be done, right? Like, we just had a brief conversation,
But I
but
think
I
we've
don't know.
done that before.
Yeah, and
Because
We did that. We
I
did
would
that
like to-
once
And
already.
I had the conversation with some of you. I spoke with many of you since last Wednesday, but I may not have mentioned this in every single one of my conversations. Last year, there was a different, we found the median of all the employees listed in salary order, and then we had a different rate for those, a lower rate for those above the median, and a higher rate for those below the median. And while taken in a single year, it's not a big deal. But if over multiple time periods, my only word of caution would be that not necessarily from the highest paid person to the lowest paid person, right? But people in the margins, right? Somebody just above the median or just below the median, that if that practice is continued over several time periods, that you're gonna have inversion, where somebody now that it was paid less than somebody
Right.
leapfrogs them because you're compensating them. So I advocate for on a constant percent for the staff, So I would recommend that we do that.
Okay. The mayor's not here with us tonight, right? But I'm gonna speak for him because we joke about it all the time. There's only one time a year where the mayor and I collaborate, and that's during budget season. It's one thing that we agree on, and that is, cutting the budget and keeping it, trimmed. So the town has always been a contract town. It's all, we subcontract everything. And I truly believe, and I had this conversation with the manager, that we've become very salary heavy. And we have a lot of departments and a lot of department heads and a lot of directors. And so I understand that we're not necessarily as competitive with bigger municipalities or with, even counties, but we have to reach a moment where we reach the cap of what we can pay our employees, right? So I don't want to lose staff members. That's definitely not something that I like to see. It has been happening for years, and sometimes the grass is greener or there's opportunities, and we would never tell an employee not to pursue those opportunities. But we also have to be fiscally conservative with our salaries. We are a very small municipality, and we have to continue to understand that and not continue to increase. So for me, even at a 5, I think it's high for me, for my taste at this moment. I was more inclined towards a 4, but some of the higher salaries on our, and I have a list of salaries, some of them are high enough where I just don't think that we need to be competitive. So that's the little bit of heartburn that I have, where I would like to give an increase to those that make a little bit less, but I also understand your point where, we don't want that to happen either.
Yeah, I don't have an issue supporting the COLA at that 4%. Would you be keeping the merit at 0 to 2?
I would propose a flat 4, and that to me is merit. I think that for the most part, most staff members are excellent, and so passing the COLA and the merit is basically we're passing a 6.
So I have a question.
It doesn't build on the merit portion doesn't build next year. That's wiped off. Like last year's merit, it's not built into the base.
It's not built into the salary. Correct.
So I have a question. When we tackled the whole merit versus COLA thing last time, one of the requests that I made of the manager was that the performance evaluations happened before the budget. Have they already happened?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do we already know the breakdown of how many people are at what?
We do. I don't have them here now, but the one thing that I think last year I had thought that it would be good to, because we have, I think, 4 categories: below average, average or satisfactory, above average, and exceptional. And I had proposed that those that got above average and exceptional, above average get 1%, and exceptional the 2%, and then anything below that would be 0. So, but I think that the discussion led me to the only thing was either 2 or 0, nothing in between. And I think that's critical, because there are some people that are doing good work. They don't qualify, at least based on the evaluations. They don't get exceptional. So it's either the all or nothing type of mentality kind of hurts. And I think, but to your question, the evaluations were done. I'll have that for you, but I don't have them here.
Yeah, if you could, and obviously I don't need the evaluations themselves, just a breakdown of how many employees placed in, actually, how many employees placed in each category, and then the salary, the cumulative salaries of those employees at those levels, so that I can calculate what that distribution looks like.
Right. And Vice Mayor, if I may, one thing at the last budget hearing, there was a mention from somebody from the public that talked about, and it's a similar discussion to what's been had here, right? Is what are other places doing? A 3%, a 4%, a 5%? That's the state, whatever, the county, other cities. And the one thing that is probably not quantified is employees giving themselves a raise, all right? And I'll explain what I mean by that. They're giving themselves a raise by free agency, right? So somebody who sits there and, their employer's offering a 4% or a 5%, they're giving themselves a raise by going back out into the job market and looking for other opportunities And I think that's what we have seen, at least in the 4 years that I've been here. And it's something that I have to catch myself, right? Because my paradigm, myself, and it's my problem, right? It's not anybody else's problem. My problem is that my whole paradigm, my whole entire professional career is you get somewhere, you start working for an employer, you stay there for 25 or 30 years. I know that that doesn't happen, especially with today's, let's say, 40-year-olds and under. They bounce around. Somewhere for 2 or 3 years, they bounce around to another employer. I don't think that that is good from an organization. I believe that an organization benefits tremendously by retaining our people. We've invested a whole lot of money in our folks. We've invested time, energy, and effort, and so I believe that there is a value to the organization to retain our folks. Well, they're going to go anyways, or let them go. You know, the 2 or 3 years and then they bounce off to another place, I believe is detrimental to the organization, thereby being detrimental to our residents, the ones who are paying for the organization. So from that perspective, I think it's difficult to quantify, but I believe that people are giving themselves a raise by putting themselves back out on the job market. And I'd rather get to the point where we can, you know, and I agree with you. We're not going to compete with Dade County. We're not going to compete with Miami Beach. We're not going to compete with the big boys. But we can compete with those in the, let's say, 20,000 to 50,000 population range, right? In that group of cities, we should not be losing anybody because of salary to other cities in that population range. That's my personal opinion, and I really want to do everything. We have, and I've been a cheerleader for them all along, and I continue to be. We have an all-star cast, and I don't want to lose any more all-stars. We have lost some all-stars, especially recently, and I don't want to. So I know that I sound, you know, like the one who's trying to, you know, squeeze water from a turnip, but we need to keep our folks. We need to keep our folks, and it's good for us. It's great for them, but it's also good for this organization and our residents.
No, and I understand that. I truly do, and I know that we had a conversation about it. And I will tell you, for all the staff members that are here, this gentleman is your biggest cheerleader. Never underestimate the power of conviction that he has to lobby for you. We do have a 1% increase in FRS this year as well. So that's another burden that is imposed on us that is also money for the employees as well. So that's why I was proposing a 4, because we're already obligated to put that 1% into the FRS.
Yeah, I'm going to echo the sentiment that Councilwoman Rano mentioned. You have no bigger champion in the staff, and I truly believe that Mr. Manager, you're always serving their best interest. That's why I don't want to necessarily hamstring you and cause you, right, that pain point where you're losing some of your most valuable resources for what equivocates maybe a couple $100 or a couple $1,000, right? And you're right. I would say there's a certain portion of the demographic that doesn't value loyalty and really values their bottom line, right? That what's a couple $1,000 is what would make them flip, right? In my company, that's not a valuable asset, right? But we would have to reimburse them accordingly. So do you think any changes that we would make to this COLA would create that, right? Would you have somebody flipping for this variance that we're proposing? And if so, and that's a critical issue, what do you need in flexibility to make sure that they're not, right?
Yeah.
Because that's something that you do have under your control, that we can mess with the COLA, but you can still go back, and if one of your staff members merits more money because they deserve it and they're on the line, you have that flexibility to control.
Yeah, I do, but it's limited, right? Because there's still X number of dollars, and I have to work whatever individual adjustments I make for somebody who's, you know, that I have to be more competitive with. It's still a limit. I couldn't do that with the entire staff.
No,
right?
I understand, but we do it on a regular basis for all the other line items in the budget. If you were to come forward and say, hey, I need $10,000 because I'm going to lose my building director.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't, you know what I'm saying? I'm not using that example. I'm going to, you know, I think that's something that we're going to work with you. I see our relationship as a partnership as well, you know, and I say that for you to know that you have us as well to help you through that
Right.
that challenge. So what I don't want to do is create a situation here where where you have attrition because we're looking at a COLA that's just more in line with what we've been seeing from our experiences, right? And I don't know if our experience is tainted or shifted because we look at it through a different lens, right? That's why I'm asking you the question.
Right. And I think I've done that since I've been here, which is when I provide you my recommendation for a COLA adjustment. I haven't done it without a basis, right? I haven't just pulled a number out of thin air and said, hey, these guys are great, give them a 20% increase, right? It's been based on something, right? And it's usually based on the inflationary rate, and it's quantifiable. There's a rate that's very specific to the Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach area, so it's very unique to us. It doesn't take into account inflation in Montana or any place else. It's very targeted to Southeast Florida. And so the recommendations that I make are based on that. But I understand that there are limits, right? There are constraints. There's a lot of different factors playing in, right? And what I can tell you is there's a whole lot of folks that work with us that already give us the hometown discount, right? They already give us, and they're fine with that, right? They're fine with that if it's reasonable, the margin, right? 1,000, 2,000 more than the market. Yeah, but the people that are leaving us over the 4 years that I've been here, we're not talking about $1,000 to $2,000. We're talking about $15,000 to $20,000, right? So it's not 1,000 that may make a difference in somebody's life. You know, for most people, that's not going to be an adjustment in their life. They're not going to get a fancier car. They're not going to get a bigger house. You know, it's nice, but when you're talking about $15,000 to $20,000, now you're talking about something that people can make, and like I worry about them, more importantly, they're worried about their families, just like all of us, right? We all do things in life, number one, with our family in mind, and when they're faced with that, being loyal to the organization, staying close to home, right? There's a benefit to that. Trust me, I drove 45 minutes to work for 33 years to downtown Miami and downtown Fort Lauderdale. I know what it's like now to be one stoplight away from home. There's a personal value to that. But ultimately, if we're talking about $15,000, $20,000, people say, hey, I'll drive an extra 30 minutes to get to work for an extra $20,000. So those are the factors, and that's the background. Sometimes people, whether it's in the public or you guys, and maybe I don't explain myself well enough, you know, you just see a number on a piece of paper. But trust me that when I make these proposals, I go way out of my way for them to be logical and based on foundation and based on logic and based on some metric. It's not just a number that I pull out of thin air, and that's the reason why I put what I put. But
So,
I'm sorry.
no, yep.
Just one last closing thought. And it goes to Councilmember Collazo's question. I think he was going with this question. Is ultimately, you know, what's originally proposed was 8% and 2%. If it's some number lower than that, I think our staff would be happy. They'd be grateful. But if that number goes to 0 or goes to 1% or 2%, it's going to be traumatic, especially understanding that they're also experiencing the higher gas prices, food prices, the cost of their homes, everything else, right? So they have to provide for their families just like all of us. We have to, in our professional lives, we have to provide for our family. That's number one, and obviously that's number one for them.
So one of the things that I wanted to chime in about, right? So, you know, and it's very much generational, but the research is out there, especially in the younger demographics. A lot of workers are more. We look at it from our generation, where compensation is the top decision maker, and in in the case of a lot of younger workers, it's not. You know, there's other things, you know, work-life balance and other things that come well before that. So one of the things that I would like to see is, other than compensation and other than dollars in the bank, other methods of increasing employee retention that you can implement, and some of them are outside the box, but I'd like to see some of those on here.
Well, I think the manager has done some of those, right? Like the Fridays during the summer and
They
other
have
things.
they have a great boss that they work for. I provide a great working
Right.
environment. They, you know,
And that's definitely a component of it. What I want to make sure is that those things are there, because one of the things that you see is, and yes, we've had some senior staffers go, and it dovetails into my next point. But the younger workers, I mean, I've seen faces that I've seen on Facebook, and then a week later they're gone. Right, in one door, out the back door, done. Right, and so getting some of those people to stick is less on compensation and more on some of those other retainage type operations.
And I'm gonna date myself because I'm a lot older than you are. But I'm not interested in the workers that I have to convince them to stick. If this is not for you, if our organization is not for you, and I think that that's a trend that we're seeing. I have a very small office with one staff member, so I don't use myself as an example. But a lot of my clients are seeing this, that you have to cater and give so much for an employee to stay, because ultimately they don't want to work. And I'm not talking about our staff members. We are blessed with wonderful staff members. But this new trend that we're seeing now post-COVID is not one that we should even cater to. Like, I'm not interested. If you came in and someone looked at you crossed, or you had to come in too early, or they asked you to wear a certain shirt and you are unhappy and you didn't want to come back, hallelujah. Praise the Lord, don't come back.
Right, I'm not talking about letting the prisoners run the asylum
Thank
either.
you. Yes,
that's
thank you.
not
That's a great way.
Exactly. Yeah, that's not what I'm going for. What I want to see is, the return of the employee softball game, the things of that nature that breed camaraderie, that are not as expensive as an 8% COLA.
Yeah,
and have the same or equivalent effect. One of the departments, and this was something I was going to bring up later, but I'll bring it up now. One of the departments that, because of the skill set requires, tends to be that younger, more creative type employee, is the communications department, and that's a department where we've seen a lot of churn. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I would like to see is maybe putting that function out to bid, and go back to our roots as a contract city and outsource those functions, right, to a firm that has perhaps a different corporate culture than we do, mm-hmm. that can produce the product that we need in a manner that we would not be able to produce it on our own, right? And leveraging the fact that this company would have several customers over which they could, spread out their assets. So when you have a function that you need to do that doesn't necessarily fit well within the parameters of your existing corporate culture, outsourcing is a very good way of mitigating that effect. So that's something I'd like to.
That'd be something that I'd like to explore as well. That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, we're fully staffed in that department now. So, I mean, to implement that in the short term would mean, laying off.
No. I'm not looking to do that, and I think.
Right, and that's what I mean. Over the long haul, even through attrition,
exactly,
maybe we can get there. But I haven't
either through attrition or if other opportunities in other departments open up that the current people that we have can meet, then that works too.
Right. I haven't given up on this generation. On the younger generation. I have 3 kids, not at home anymore, but I have 3 kids, and they're in the 30-somethings, and I think that they're a great generation, and I haven't given up on it. I believe that they are moldable. I remember in the fire station, the moment you walk through the door, the station sergeant, which was the senior guy who was not an officer. They called him the station sergeant, which was a rank that didn't even exist in the fire department. It was a guy that would grab you and say, hey, kid, this, and he'd give you all of the stuff that's not written in any SOP book, it's not written in any manual, and it was all the way, and it dealt primarily with organizational culture. And that's what I kind of, and it's not something you flip a switch and all of a sudden it's there, right? But little by little, I've been trying to implement what I believe was a successful organizational culture, and I'm trying to implement that as much as I can, little by little, You know, obviously, I'm not perfect. The organizational culture that I believe is a good one isn't perfect, but I am trying little by little and get them to buy into it. And I think that we've been successful, and I think that they're receptive to it. And I think that leads to better customer service, leads to better outcomes with our residents, and I believe that it's good for the organization.
All right, so I'm gonna try and regroup us here. I started doing some math on the couple items that we've been discussing, the tree trimming, committee increases, and the merit bonus specifically, without touching the COLA portion of the bonus. Those three line items equate to $190,192. Okay? If you add in, the councilwoman said that she didn't want to get there, but let's assume, for the sake of math, that we do a 5% COLA, so a 3% reduction. That would add another $88,875, and the total would be $279,067. Okay?
Walk me through the items
The
again.
numbers are tree trimming, $54,281. Tree planting, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Tree planting.
Okay.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
The committees?
The committee increases,
Right, the
not the
committee
one that
increase.
says a 10% additional decrease, just the committee
Just the 70.
increase. Yes. Committee increases 70,600. And the merit bonus 65,311. Those three line items equate to 190,192. Then if you were to add the COLA at 5%, which means a decrease from the 8%, that would add an additional 88,875 for a total of 279,067. Now, we've already identified that we needed 50,000 for the police theft program, to add 50 to get us to the 75,000. So that leaves us at $229,067. Right?
Ed, do you have the percentage in if we were to put that toward a rollback or
3%?
reduction? What would that be
I
at
did that.
so far in the
It's
start?
between, if we did at the 227,
A little under.
we're between 2 and 3%. So maybe 2.5.
Thank you. And question to Ed, though, just to refresh my memory, that $500,000 that Ms. Mendez mentioned with respect to the senior center build-out, was that for the actual construction or was that for the engineering?
That is for the interior build-out. So it's kind of like in a savings account, because the Grahams are going to provide us the shell, and they're in design now, and that will sit there until, so that when the shell is done, we don't have to now start looking for money. That money is in a savings account sitting there, waiting for everything related. Jeremy, that is construction and design, right? The 500? It's just construction? Yeah.
It's construction. And
I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilwoman.
oh no, I'm sorry, council member. Go ahead, finish your point, and then I was going to ask about the facility, the storage facility at Miami
Got
Lakes
it.
Optimist.
Okay, yeah, so just to finish up on that, do we reasonably expect them to complete the construction of the shell within this fiscal year?
Well, they're in design now. They don't have a shovel in the ground yet.
But do we expect them to within the next year?
To finish the shell?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I would
And-
guess that would be a no.
Okay, well, I can tell you that I believe that there is some appetite at the state, and is something for me to tip my hand, Councilman Fernandez, for that I'd like to include in our legislative priorities for next year. I think we can squeeze it in there. So maybe we don't want to take the whole 500,000, but maybe that could be an additional source or pot of funds that we can temporarily reduce for this coming fiscal year, just to go ahead and do something else with that, either in terms of additional services or perhaps even lowering the millage a little further.
Yeah, I know that some of that pot was just put in there. The remaining amount was just put in there by this council at the carry forward amendment last March or April, because we were underfunded in that fund, in that capital project fund. So you guys put the remainder to get it up to 500. We have absolutely no idea what that project is going to cost to build. As you know, that 500,000 is a number that's been floating around since I got here. It's been probably floating around since the whole senior center idea was even floated. So we have no idea what the build out is going to cost us until we actually put it out for bid.
Do we know the square footage? What's the square footage?
Excellent point, by the way.
Because if you know the square footage.
Yeah, like, do we know if it's going to mirror the clubhouse that's being proposed, for example, at the center of the Cloverleaf at Optimist Park?
I believe it's a lot bigger.
The one at Optimist Park, Councilman, is a little different. I know where you're going. It's 267 a square foot, but that's, you got to build up construction. The senior center is interior build out, so it'll probably be a little bit less than that per square foot.
Right, so I remember having this conversation with Dr. Lopez years ago, where I thought that the build-out should be something more along the lines of what we could afford, and not just, what the provider, the service provider wanted, because this center, from my conversation years ago, this has been going on since before I sat up here. This was going to be built out to the specs of the provider. At that moment, it was Miami Jewish. Now I don't know who the provider is going to be for the skilled nursing and the
No, but
ALF.
this is just the senior center.
Correct.
This is not the ALF.
But it's going to be used by that provider for their extracurricular activities with the, at least this is what I was.
Yeah.
So when I requested, a more modest build out, because $500,000 for just the interior of a building is a lot of money. So when I requested a more modest build out, that's what I was told, that it had to be built out to the specs of this provider, which always was you know me, and I rain on everybody's budget. I just thought that it was unheard of, right? I give you what I can give you, not what you want and what you need. So I love the way that you're thinking, because that's definitely something that I've been trying to accomplish for a long time.
Melissa, is there any, in this capital improvements section where we have money allocated to different plans, is there any of that money that we cannot touch?
Yes, only 250 came from general fund. That was the allocation that you guys did back in March or April. So 250 that's in that capital project fund came from general fund and go back to general fund.
250, meaning the senior center.
Yes.
That's the only portion of that money that we can touch.
But what about the other line items? Okay. Because the Miami Lakes Optimist Club storage facility, that has been on the books forever.
Yep,
And the par 3, I think that was maybe park impact fees?
Yeah,
or
that
we cannot touch.
No,
You can't touch.
And the storage facility, we're
finally gonna.
Yeah, we're moving in that direction. We're finally gonna do it. It's necessary. The building,
No, I know,
that's
I
there
understood
is
that,
horrendous.
yes.
And they
I
thought
understood
originally that they can just remodel it, but then because of the floodplain issues, that then it went from a manageable project to an exorbitant project. So now we're going back to completely demolish, but come in with something that's reasonable, that can fit the budget of what we have there.
Yeah, because I remember when they were talking to me about that back when I got on board in 2018, and they were doing or talking about a tear down and then building back up. I think it was for like a cost of $220 or something.
Yeah, it wasn't a tear down, but it was a gut. They were going to completely gut and leave the four walls, but that became unmanageable because they were going to have to raise it because of the floodplain issues. They didn't have enough fill. Then it was going to require a full tear down. That's when it became financially unmanageable.
So just food for thought, I don't know if Councilmember Dieguez ever toured that building, but I did. I'm not sure. I think that you guys came in afterwards. Maybe you didn't tour the building, but.
The storage facility?
The storage facility.
Yeah, I've seen it all the time.
Okay, so this is a storage facility that's used by one of our contractors to store their equipment?
Yeah, the equipment that they use for our facility.
Okay,
yeah.
but it also has like office space and other things.
But the office is not used.
Right, so when we rebuild it, it's gonna be strictly
Just storage,
It's
yes.
just gonna be very basic?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know, that we weren't gonna be putting in offices.
That's all we could
and-
afford.
I have a question before we move on. What is a reverse transfer? Specifically, the reverse transfer from tennis court lighting for
Yeah.
91,908.
Because again, the project for the tennis court lighting was partially funded with general fund money. So the amount of that project, if we were to cancel the project and not do the lighting, some of it we can't take back. It just stays in the park fund. But some of it we can bring back into the general fund for general expenditure, and that's the amount that we put on there of 90-something thousand, 91,000.
And that's because the project is ongoing, like it's not completed yet?
It hasn't been awarded yet, so it's potentially on the chopping block for you to consider.
Yeah, no, I think that ship sailed.
All right. So any other questions? We have, I guess, approximately $229,000 is what we have identified as potential savings. Is there any other item that you guys want to discuss?
What is alarm monitoring?
279 minus the 50 that we're gonna add
279
to the
minus the
police.
50 that's added to police.
227?
So 227.
229?
229, sorry.
Ish.
The
Total of
total
100.
was 75, I believe.
Right, because there was 50 in the budget, you wanted to add another 50.
Well, there was 50 in the budget, but only 25 of that
Yeah,
was
so-
for the theft unit. The other 25 was for traffic detail.
Right, so it would be 75
Plus
for
25.
vehicle burglaries, 25 for traffic, so a total of 100 instead of a total of 50.
Correct.
So it'd be
To add
50,000 more.
Right, so when I added up the items that we had talked about, we had gotten to 279, and then I reduced 50,000 from there, so 229.
229.
And then that puts us, Councilman Dieguez, somewhere between 2 and 3%.
What is
So
the
if we take the
5,000?
COLA to a 4, we can get to the 3%?
Or if we go to a 6, then we, we
Then we
stick
go to
in
a
that.
2%?
Yeah, we stay in that 1 to 2%, yeah.
We eliminated the merit.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm more comfortable. If we eliminated the merit, I'm more comfortable with 5.
With a 5, including the 1% increase in FRS?
Yep.
I mean, we're already at a 5.
That doesn't go in our employees' pocket.
Well, it doesn't go in their pocket, but it eventually goes to them. I mean,
Well,
it's part of their pension.
I
It's
could
not-
tell you
It
that-
doesn't go in anybody's pocket, but it's still,
I could tell you
It's
that the
still part of their
majority of the
package.
money that goes to FRS goes to pay off unfunded liability. And pension funding is a super complicated thing, but there's unfunded liability, and if you look at the percentage, and usually they break it down, the percentage, the 11%, the reason that it went up is because of the unfunded liability. So it's just paying because of the down market, they make that up by just charging us more. But that doesn't necessarily modify the benefits to the employee. The employee, it's a defined benefit plan. So the
so
employees,
regardless of what we contribute, the benefit
the
is what
the
it
employees
is.
don't change, right. I was shocked when I was with Broward Sheriff's, I was in FRS, and I was not in the defined benefit portion, I was in the defined contribution portion. And I think at that time, Broward County was contributing for me on my behalf, like 15 or 20%. And of that, only 4% went
That's
to.
crazy.
Yes. So the majority of the FRS contribution goes to retire unfunded liability, whether you're in the into the defined benefit
Defined
plan
benefit or defined
or the
contribution,
defined
doesn't
contribution plan. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the 5s. I mean, I think Councilman Collazo hit it on the head. If the state's doing, 5.3, I think we should be in the 5s.
School board did less, but
Another question: What is under code? There's $5,000 for alarm monitoring. What is that?
That's the false alarm. We have a company that monitors the false alarms, and then there's a fee that gets charged to them, but they charge us for that monitoring, right?
What is that,
I'm
like
explaining it
Crywolf?
correctly?
and the fees that the residents or the business owners pay, does that compensate for that, or?
The microphone cage is right there, yeah.
I'm gonna confess that I've been a victim of that. My apologies.
Even if it is I mean, to some extent, offset by other revenues or whatnot. Those programs typically pay for themselves because it also reduces false alarms and police dispatches and things like that. So, like, without having the program.
No, no, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so
It should when your janitorial staff doesn't set off your alarm every afternoon.
correct. So if that's what it is, I'm in favor of leaving it alone.
So the actuals for last year, what we collected in false alarm fees was about $30,000.
We collected 30,000 in revenue from false alarms.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I might have paid for half of that.
Vice Mayor,
Sir.
let me float an idea with regard to whatever millage you're considering. And as I've stated before, and I think it's obvious and evident to everybody, once a millage reduction occurs, it's a one-way street, right? Unless there's some financial catastrophe, I've never seen a local government voluntarily just to enhance service. It's usually some financial crisis. I used to see it in Miami every 3 or 4 years. They'd have another one, right? But so what I'd like to consider is once you get to that bottom number, whether it's 229 or some other number, for you to consider splitting that into a millage reduction and possibly a rebate for the rest of it. And it's something that I think Lorenzo would have to look into, a rebate that would go to every household, not just any kind of, any one of these classifications. And I'll tell you, how that works. Because a millage reduction, what you do is, who's going to get the biggest benefit of a millage reduction, right? The one with the $1 million house, the $2 million house, they're going to get a bigger benefit than somebody with a $100,000 condo, right? Mm-hmm. So one thing to consider is to split whatever number you come up with and do maybe a 1% millage reduction and then a 1% rebate back to residents in a check that would come. We already went through that exercise with the senior rebates last year. We went through the growing pains of establishing that process. It's something that we have. I think there's 6,779 households, residential households in the town.
What was that number again?
6,779 residential households. So, for instance, if you took and you can do it for a little bit and split it, or you can do it for all of it. You can do it all rebate and no millage reductions. That's just something for you to consider, right? So that the people on the lower end of the spectrum will get a bigger bang for their buck. So everybody would get whatever. Let's say it's $20 or $50 or whatever the number turns out to. They would get a check from the town made out to the owner of the house. It'd get directly mailed to them. They would know that the town is doing something, because I venture to say maybe 2% of our residents will know that they got a millage reduction. They will know that this council has done something to improve their lot, whether it's a small amount or not. It's something that you're doing directly to the residents. Everybody's going to get a check. They're going to see it. They know that they got it. And it's some level of awareness that this council has done something to improve their lot. Just an idea for you to consider.
And this would go only to residential?
Yes.
Now, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, and thank God for Councilwoman Verano, because I'm not the math genius for sure, but I think per household, the number you gave us, 6,779, at $229 and $61, I got like $33 a household.
Yep.
Yeah, me too.
It's pretty, huh?
Me too.
Yeah, $33.
I like that number. I think when you combine that again, because I feel that our role here is to provide more supplemental relief to what the county is doing. In that, I don't think it's right that we always are, the ones that have to bear the brunt of basically helping out our residents alone. That again, emphasis on the alone part. Obviously, that is our role. But I think at 33, combined with whatever the county reduction comes out to, I think that's pretty good. But I'm pretty open to either option, but I do think that we're good at this 229 number. It adds more public safety investment than we've had to deal with some of these issues, and it's targeted. So I like it for those reasons. This budget is going to have more money for infrastructure than we've ever had, in terms of, not just new infrastructure, but also like replacing old infrastructure. And I think, whether we go with the millage reduction or with this rebate, I think that's providing actual value to the residents. So I'm fine with it the way things are, for, just to, again, come full circle to where we're at.
I got to think a little bit more about this rebate. I'm not sold
saying
on
let's
it.
go with it. I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
No, I
that
know.
maybe-
I'm just.
Obviously, tonight, you guys, because it's the environment that we're here in a workshop, you guys can't make decisions tonight. So I wanted to float that idea for you guys to marinate on it and see if it's something you want to consider next Tuesday when we meet again for
Yeah,
actual action.
I'm gonna just put my concern about the rebate issue. And it's gonna be, there could be a person, multiple, thousands maybe, who pay their increase because of the millage or the tax increase is $5. And then we're gonna give them a check for $30 off the backs of someone who increased $200 or $300, or businesses who have increased,
Yeah, Melissa did the numbers for an average household, similar house that we've been talking about for the financing for the bond program. What is the typical house? Is taxable value of $250-something thousand. That person's with the proposed budget, not any of the actions that you're considering or talking about now. With the proposed budget, I think their increase was going to be like $19. So, right? Is that right? Yeah, it's
But
growing.
I think
It's
Jeff's
not going
point
to
is
last
correct,
forever.
which is proportionally, it's still going to, strictly speaking, be more equitable.
All right, well, we're gonna have the same issue that we had with the senior rebates,
right.
where
And
we, right.
so you either do it the way what the manager's saying, where everyone gets $33, or
Yes.
we just lower the
We
millage rate.
just lower, right. It's more of a PR thing, right, where, and I agree with you, half of the people won't even know.
Won't know that we
Anything at all,
lowered it
that we
unless they
lowered
got a
it at
check.
all.
Half,
Right.
95%, 99%.
Right.
Very, very few people will know the action that you guys have taken. They should, but they
Right,
won't.
but they won't.
But they will know that they get that envelope when it arrives in the mail, and, whatever the dollar value is, it's something that you can say, and we'll, we'll devise the message so they understand what it's for and so forth. So I believe that residents will be more aware of it that way.
There is no doubt in my mind that residents will be more aware when you send them back a check. But I have a hard time stomaching the fairness of it,
Right.
right? And that's,
That's my concern. That
It's
we're.
not fair.
It's not fair.
There's no way around it. It's just not. It has more of an impact, a PR impact, but it's not fair.
Let's take a small step back. The entire way that property taxes are assessed and levied is completely
It's not
broken.
fair.
Like the entire system is broken. That's just off the bat, right? The amount of time since your house last changed hands is the biggest determining factor in how much what you pay in taxes.
Not even change hands. If you improve your house, right? If you get a new CO, you had a build out or an addition or something like that, you have now triggered a reassessment. And you could have lived in that house for 15 years,
Correct.
saved up all your money, and then you save $150,000 to do an addition, and then guess what? You get your CO, and boom, your assessment increases just because you decided to make an investment into the home that you live in.
Right.
I agree with you. One of the other issues, and this is actually, I'll be tipping my hand, Councilman Dieguez, for a legislative priority. Miami-Dade County Public Schools taxable values are not capped with the homestead
No, they
exemption.
are not. And particularly for the commercial properties.
So, no, well, the commercial properties are not capped anyway.
But the bond, that last bond that was approved a few years back, that had
The
a
school
heavy
board.
impact, yes, on
Well,
commercial properties.
they're going for renewal, because that expired. It expires now in '23.
Yeah, that's not gonna pass.
Right, they're
So
going for
they're
renewal.
going back
There's just no way.
for,
That it is what it is. They're going for whatever they're doing. I'm just saying the way they levy taxes.
Is very.
And by the way, it is the most impactful on the residents. And then we get blamed. That's why Councilman Dieguez developed the dollar right? Where the
Right.
residents can see that the amount that you're paying, really only a small sliver comes to us to provide services for a municipality. So
And
the
reality is that, to take it a step further, those residents within the town that live in private communities pay into all the services of the town, yet don't receive any. We don't receive tree trimming, we don't receive sidewalk repairs, we don't receive stormwater repairs, but we pay the stormwater bond and we pay all of the taxes, yet because we have a gate in front of our community, we don't get any of the services. So it's just unfair
So
all across the board.
we're just venting here, but I guess we're all in agreement on
So
that.
the least of our worries is a $33 check, I guess, at this point.
So it's a sticking point, right? How do we manage it? And I hear your recommendation. How do we manage it and it be fair, right? And that's,
Yeah, and I guess, Councilmember, sorry to interrupt, that what somebody may consider fair, that's a moving target, right? So some people would say, hey, you reduced the millage by 1%. The millionaire in Loch Lomond that has, he's gonna get the biggest bang, right? And why, he's the one who could, who can most
pay it the most.
afford, the increase in property taxes. But the one in the $100,000 condo, they're gonna get a smidgen, right? So that's a different perspective of why, this idea was even discussed amongst our staff and said, hey, this could be a way of people with a lower priced piece of real estate would get the same amount as the person with a $1 million mansion or multi-million-dollar mansion in Loch Lomond. And it's not a bad thing. God bless them. I wish I had the multi-million-dollar mansion. It's not that they're bad people. They're great people. But it's just talking about the equity part, right? It's just what is the most bang? What more, who needs the relief more than others?
So let me put the cart way before the horse and let me get out in front of 4 months from now or 5 months from now when we hear the carry forward, right? So we have the opportunity to adjust the millage. If we want to go with that hybrid that you suggested, the 1% and the 1%, we can do the 1% in the millage now, and then we can, based on the carry forward, decide if we want to do the rebate later.
Yes. Yeah, you're going to have an opportunity, and it's in the budget message, so it's not going to be a surprise. And I know the budget is a thick document. You may not have read it word for word, but in there it talks about what we're projecting the year end to be, right? The year end, there's going to be a significant, similar to last year for the same reason, there's going to be a significant carry forward that's going to be the year end, right? We have to let the year end, we got to close out accounts, we have to have the auditors come in, and when you finally see it in March or April, there's going to be a significant dollar amount. I can't tell you the amount, but it's going to be significant. And that is going to be an opportunity, and the reason for that is unexpected, unbudgeted revenues that we got through the COVID process, the same thing that happened to us in the previous year, right? But so you're going to have an opportunity. I wouldn't recommend you use that opportunity to, incur recurring expenses, but it's going to be an opportunity for you to consider things that you do one time, and then that's it. Similar to what you guys did with the senior exemption rebate last year. You did it at one time, and then every time after that has to be reconsidered.
Correct. I think one of the things that I like about doing that, right, is it's like every other business transaction you've ever entered into. We're telling you what the price is up front, and we told you last year, this is the millage rate, this is what it costs to provide the services that the town provides. We close the books, there's money left over. It's not our money, it's their money, right?
Right.
So it should go back to them. So I fairness-wise, I think that's the...
Council
Then it
member,
goes
that
back in
might
check.
be the best idea
Yeah.
you've ever had up here. I mean, I really like that idea.
Mirta's November money. She's
We
gonna
can
get
give it
in a
back to
check.
Mita. We can increase her $33 to $35 or $37 maybe. But
That's-
I agree. I think that's a smart move.
So going back to the fairness argument, Mr. Manager, you sent us an email today, basically calculating our revenue, right? How much we're going to make, and it stands to be at about 10%.
10.7.
There's no way that we can look. each other in the face and take that. And I'd be willing to forego whatever CPI adjustment this year. If staff is taking a hit, there's no way that I can accept that.
I believe that there's two different things, right? One is the mayor's item. I think that is charter. I believe that the rest of the compensation is by ordinance.
It's 18 to 18.
With the inflationary factor stipulated in the charter?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
So you
what is that
can't.
percentage?
Okay, I had not
Ten
read
point
that
seven.
email.
The U.S. Department of Labor issues this, and it talks about the inflationary rate, and we have the document. You may have.
And you're saying we can't reduce it. We need to be able to reduce that. Why not? Why can't we reduce
Because
that?
it's in the charter. You'd have to have a charter amendment. I mean, you can receive it and then write a check and
What
donate it to somebody.
is there anything left on here on travel and any of these other line items that belong to the council? Travel per diem,
On the
travel.
travel stuff, I believe we do have control over, but I just, I just want to point out, I would ask that, at least for myself, that nobody please, make a motion to affect my particular account. I'm now part of the League of Cities, both, not only at the county, but also at the state level. So, especially as the Florida League gets underway, there's going to be a lot more travel involved there. So, I would ask that not be cut on my end if everyone would like to explore giving back their particular portion, to this pot of money, the 229.
I'd like to make a motion out of order to cut the councilman's travel.
Just his. Just his.
Yeah, fortunately, it's the workshop, so you'll have to wait.
I mean, if
You will be
if we're
traveling
talking
more than
about-
I will, for sure.
If we're talking about rebates, I mean, I have no problem cutting back the town a check. I mean, if that's how we need to comply with the charter and then give it back, there's no way that any of us can look at each other and say, oh, I'm comfortable with this. I mean, it just doesn't sit well with me. So I have no problem.
Is it a separate, it's separate for the council and for the mayor?
There's two different things. There's like a line that talks about expenses and council member reimbursements, right? And that is stipulated by the charter. In some years ago, they set the salary for the mayor. They started at $18,000, and then they applied the inflationary factor. So every year since then, it's had the inflation. The last several years, the inflationary factor's been, 1 or
Right,
point something. It's not. But this year, the inflationary amount is going to be different. But the mayor's salary is set by ordinance. The reimbursement to the mayor and the council, right? So that's the same for all seven of you. That one is set by the charter. So that one you really don't have. The other one, you can pass an ordinance and you can modify the portion of the mayor's salary. But the reimbursement is by charter. You'd have to have a charter amendment. You could have to it's a bigger deal.
But we could give the money back.
Yeah, you can do what.
Also, part of the mayor's, and you're correct, Mr. Manager, part of the mayor's salary is also based on, in charter, section 2.6. It discusses how the price can be increased but not decreased, and it has to be based on the consumer price index for Miami.
And in all honesty, I don't mind that
And
he
how much is
receives.
that?
He
Do we know how much
has
that
a
is?
different role than us.
Dollars
right?
or percent?
Right, well, he has a salary, so it's different. It's dollars. I'm sorry, I didn't read the email.
You always delete our emails that we send you?
No, not before I read them.
Councilmember Collazo, an alternative to that would just be give the staff a 10.7% increase and then keep your money.
Motion to adjourn.
Nice try there, Ed.
Well, I think that can just be at our discretion, and if we feel that, I think the right thing to do would be, I would like the mayor's increase to be reflective of whatever COLA we give staff, but I guess we can't do that, right? Because that's in the charter?
No, that one's ordinance, I think.
Charter.
Oh, that
yeah,
one's charter
yeah,
too?
Lorenzo just said it was
Yes.
in the charter.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
okay.
All right, well,
The ordinance simply enacted what the charter was calling for.
And so if we reimburse, if we decide to reimburse and we just give the town a check, that's okay?
Well, not to the town, but the town has a foundation where the money from the wine and food and wine, I mean, there's also.
Okay, so it can be like a charitable contribution to some, or perhaps a committee event that can be, okay, I guess we just have to be creative about that.
Done. Just gotta give us that number.
It should be, if it's 10 point something percent, it should be like, I don't know, 50 bucks a check.
50 bucks?
Yeah.
72 for the reimbursement, monthly. It's a monthly amount.
Got it. I got 2 payments left. All right, any other questions?
No appetite for full rollback, huh? All right.
I don't know
okay.
how we get there.
I'm
I don't know how
piggybacking
we-
off the manager,
I-
right? He, one last ditch
Listen,
attempt.
I don't, if you show me how we get there,
I mean, there's a way to get there, but, you know, cutting
yeah, I
the
don't,
4th
No,
of
I
July.
promise not to cut
and
services.
yeah, I
That
don't
was-
see,
that
I
was
don't
a
see how we
promise that I
get there
made.
without cutting
It doesn't-
services.
No, you
It doesn't get there.
You
I think you
don't.
get there with what Councilman Fernandez proposed, and when it comes back, right, those monies, then you
Put
give
it
it
into the rebate pot.
because it's very plausible that you have $500,000 there, right, or $400,000. So you put that 230 where we're at now, with the other 400,000 or 500,000, you can
Right.
get to that $635,000 range.
Right. But then we have the rebate check conversation.
That is, yeah.
Oh, you know what? Something I forgot. The speed bump money that we talked about last meeting.
Yeah, to fulfill every single one of the requests, I think it was like high 90s, so 100,000 rounded off.
Oh, boy.
Would do that, so that's,
Negative.
I don't know about we can do all of them, but then we're stuck picking and choosing which ones get it and which ones don't.
Well, we still don't know
We still have to do
how,
homework on that,
how
right?
many of them are compliant and how many are not. We may,
Right.
Well, that's right. We had to look at the distances, right, on the straightaway, how much, okay. I guess you'll have that for us at the next meeting?
no pressure.
Tomorrow, you
No
said?
rush on that. We don't have the funds for it,
You
so
say
you don't have to
tomorrow?
hurry.
Just kidding. Yeah, Councilwoman, I would love to go further, but I don't see how we do it without cutting services.
No, I agree, and I looked at the list, and I don't want to cut services either. So I'm more inclined, towards Councilmember Fernandez's point, when we come back at that moment, and we usually do have
Yeah.
surplus monies that we allocate to this, that, and the other, at that point, then we can, remember the
And to the
residents
manager's
and-
point, we have more money coming from the franchise fee specifically for things that we usually use to
Correct,
address
correct, for
those
infrastructure
types of
this year.
issues, which is infrastructure. So, I mean, I think when that rollover comes, then we can.
Then we can have
well,
this conversation.
Then you can make the
No,
decision.
I just want to be clear to make sure we do the right amount or the proper homework for next week's hearing. What I understand is that you want to do $50,000 in additional police overtime to triple the proposed detail for the burglary, for the vehicle burglaries. You want to then eliminate the added extra events that the committees had proposed. You want to eliminate the $54,281 for tree planting. Eliminate the merit bonus. I don't think that you have zeroed in on a specific number for the COLA. I've heard 4%, 5%, so that is something you'll have to,
I'm outnumbered.
yeah,
I'll give in to the 5.
okay.
I have 5% on my end, that's what we were agreeing to.
5%.
So we'll calculate a 5% COLA, and then there's gonna be a dollar, a value there at the end that will be extra cuts that you have made that you'll have to decide. Well, we're gonna have the millage reduction of 1%, I hear, and then any kind of rebate would happen down the road, or,
No,
and-
We're between a 2 and a 3. Can we at least do a 2?
Yeah, I
No,
thought
we
we
were
had said
we were
the
over
two with the
too.
229.
At 220
With the
at
229
227. I'm sorry, 229.
229,
We are over 2%.
Correct.
Yeah.
If I would like to include some of the speed hump money. I mean, if we're at that 2 point something, use the point balance.
right,
So
so
do
you
2%, which is 181,000. So what does that
The
come
problem
out
with the
to?
speed humps is that we don't have any information on whether any of them are,
Yeah, but
are
to the
doable.
council, we will, and we should maybe set aside. Let me see what that number comes out to.
It's almost 100.
229,
Whatever that
067
fractional difference is,
minus
to
Right,
put
to-
it towards the speed hump, because we have people that have been waiting God knows how long on that list.
4 years at least. 47,000, and the way I got there was
229 minus the
229,067 minus the 2% change, which is 181,523. So that would leave 47,544.
So 227 minus the 181,
Yep.
and now you have
47,000.
towards the speed humps.
Which will give you, I think you guys priced them out, I think it was 4,000 a unit, or how much,
Yeah.
how much was it? So it'll give us at least 10 off that
Yeah,
list of 20-something.
and Omar, correct me if I'm wrong, we have the list, but we have not done the due diligence of every single location, and we haven't, right?
Mr.
Right,
Manager,
so we have to assess every,
Right, we
remember,
don't
it's a
have enough.
two-part, and Vice Mayor, remember, it's a two-part thing. First thing that we need to do, and both the director and I need to work on it, is create a resolution which is going to create the actual parameters. What is the distance that you want them, the area, kind of all the, ins and outs of where you want these things located. Once we've done that, then the director can go ahead and locate which ones are feasible within the town.
right, but the
We come
money
with
will
a
be
list.
there once the,
But the
once
seed
the
money,
rule or
the seed
guidelines
money
are.
to pop on 10 of them.
And also, there's gonna be parameters with regards to whether or not that area merits a speed bump, right? Some sort of
Yes.
traffic information or,
Yes, because you need to make findings of fact when you decide.
Right, because
and
just
it's
because
gotta get
someone
passed by
No,
emailed
that's
them.
not what we were told. That's not what we do not need to make the speed
don't
radar
have to.
Well,
determination.
you're gonna be making a resolution that's gonna create the parameters of
Right.
what you want as to where it makes sense to put
Right.
these speed bumps, for lack of a better word. Then, once you've done that, then the list is gonna come back to you, either as one omnibus list or individual list as to the
Yeah.
speed bumps and the locations
And
where
which
they're gonna
ones
be placed.
comply based on the parameters that are set
Correct.
up, and which ones do not. But you're gonna have funding for almost half of them,
Right,
with
but
the
the-
40-some-odd $1,000.
but the
Right,
parameters are not only gonna be geographical parameters, right?
No,
It's
the-
also gonna be based on whether
One-
there is speeding in the area or not.
Well, whether they're speeding in the area and whether the residents of the and so enough residents of that area,
area,
wanted
right.
it. I think that was one of the other things that we
Correct.
had discussed.
So
Correct.
something I'd like to propose, if for whatever reason we exhaust budgeted funds for the speed humps, there's a line item: parks, veterans, MCCCC, fitness station enhancements for Veterans Park. That would be the first place I would cut.
There's some equipment there, though, that does need to get repaired.
I understand that, but that would be as a penalty for not attending the budget.
Somebody's gonna be mad at
workshop.
you.
I second that.
The mayor of Veterans
The
Park.
mayor of Picnic Park West?
And one other thing before we go, and it's not so much tied in something that we directly need to decide on the budget, but just some friendly feedback, town manager. Each county commissioner usually gets a certain allocation of district funds to disperse how they see fit, for needs in their district. Maybe that could be another way to sweeten the pot for speed humps, or to address some of these other needs that we still want to continue on with. But I think we need to have that conversation with Commissioner Garcia and maybe look at addressing some of those needs that way, in addition to just getting the county's cooperation. But in terms of the money side, I think we also need to shake that tree down a little.
Okay.
That sounds great.
Vice Mayor, as a follow-up to this meeting, unless there's other things that you guys want to discuss, as a follow-up to this, we're going to try and quantify what we believe are the kind of the consensus things, and I'll email them to you individually, so you can tell me, no, I don't believe that that's correct, I believe this is correct, and then that way, I think it'll make next Tuesday more efficient as far as a meeting. So I'll send them to you, what I believe are the motions that are appropriate. Obviously, it's my interpretation of what I believe transpired here, and then you guys can take it for what it's worth, use them or not use them, but I think it'll help to make the next Tuesday's meeting more effective and efficient.
Got it. Okay. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Nope. All right. Seeing no further business, meeting is adjourned.
Bye, everybody.
As a reminder, Councilmember Dieguez, don't sign off just yet. The legislative sunshine
9 in the
meeting,
morning tomorrow.
I'm sleeping over there.
9 o'clock. And remember, this is just you guys as a.